Rain drizzled down over the bustling streets of New York, transforming the city into a mosaic of distorted lights reflecting in the puddles. The air was thick with the scent of wet asphalt, mingling with the aromas of food wafting from nearby restaurants and food carts. Amidst the hurried pedestrians and the relentless stream of yellow taxis, a lone German shepherd sat motionless in front of a brightly lit butcher's shop. His dark eyes, weary yet unyielding, were fixed on the slabs of fresh meat hanging behind the glass. Maverick, as he had once been called, hadn't whined or barked. He hadn't even wagged his tail. Instead, he sat with unusual discipline, his thin frame telling the cruel tale of too many days without a proper meal. His once thick coat was now dull, matted, and streaked with date, revealing small patches of missing fur and old scars. His ribs were visible beneath his taut skin, and his rain-soaked paws trembled slightly from the biting cold. But defiance coursed through him. He had learned, long ago, to wait. Most passers-by avoided his gaze, hurrying past as if he were a spectral presence haunting the sidewalk. Some glanced at him for a moment, perhaps feeling a pang of sympathy before moving on with their lives. To them, he was merely another abandoned animal lost in the chaos. But deep inside Maverick, a storm brewed, a memory of loyalty, of duty, and the unknown abyss of abandonment. He had once been part of something greater, a canine officer, trained to detect danger, protect the innocent, and follow commands without hesitation. When he had been injured during a pursuit, it had marked the end of an era. Deemed unfit for service, he had been cast aside like a broken tool. His handler had fought for him, but bureaucracy had crushed that hope, leading him instead to a shelter that had failed to honor the bond they shared. The paperwork had been lost. The system had betrayed him. How could he have known that would be the beginning of a darker chapter? Maverick's thoughts were interrupted by the soft chime of the butcher's shop's door swinging open. A tall man with a graying beard stepped out, carrying a heavy bag of meat. For a moment, he paused, frowning as his sharp eyes fell upon the rain-soaked dog sitting in front of him. There was something familiar about the scene, something that stayed a deep recognition in the man. "You're not just any stray, are you?" he muttered, eyeing the dog. Maverick flinched slightly at the sound, but he held his ground. Something about the man felt different. Perhaps it was the way he regarded Maverick, not with disdain, but with a careful observation that held a flicker of understanding. For the butcher, a memory tugged at the edges of his mind, pulling him back to years spent on the streets, patrolling alongside K9 units, dogs like Maverick that had been heroes. The butcher knelt slightly, his hand hovering over the bag of precious meat. "Hey," he offered, pulling out a small tender cut of beef and holding it out. "Eat." Maverick hesitated, uncertainty battling hunger within him. He stretched his neck forward, taking the meat gently, cautious as if expecting the kindness to be snatched away at any moment. The butcher noticed and paused, a flicker of something deeper crossing his face. "Take your time," he said softly, stepping back to give the dog space. Moments stretched into eternity as Maverick chewed delicately, unsure if this act of kindness was a fluke born from pity or a genuine direction. His instincts screamed caution, but his stomach ached with need. The butcher seemed to recognize the battle within him as he kept his gaze steady, not hurried, just patient. Maverick finished the first piece and lowered his gaze to the second offering, silently assessing. The butcher, still watching, pulled out another small cut of beef and set it down, reinforcing the silent invitation. "You have seen things, haven't you?" he muttered, almost to himself. "You're not like the others." His voice held a warmth, a deep acknowledgement of what the dog had suffered. The rain continued to patter softly against the pavement, and with each deliberate bite that Maverick took, he felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. It wasn't just the warmth of the meat, it was the understanding in the man's eyes. In that moment, Maverick dared to imagine, what if kindness didn't have to end? But just as he began to let his guard down, the butcher glanced behind him, and Maverick felt the instinct to retreat swell within him. He had learned too painfully that trust could lead to betrayal. Yet, something tethered him to this man. This wasn't just another stranger. He could sense that there was a connection, an unspoken bond formed of shared grief and unfulfilled duty. "I can't walk away from you," the butcher finally said, breaking the heavy silence that tethered them. His voice softened. "What have they done to you?" Maverick didn't answer, not that he could, but the question hung in the air between them like a thread tightly wound. With a heavy sigh, the butcher leaned against the door frame, the weight of their histories pressing down like the rain. "I don't know how you got here, but I think it's time for change, don't you?" The door loomed behind Maverick. The cold city waited, but the warmth inside soothed the remnants of his frayed spirit. He looked back at the man, whose expression bore the earnestness of someone ready to give a second chance, a rare treasure in this often unforgiving world. For the first time in what felt like forever, Maverick chose to trust, stepping closer to the warmth beckoning him forward. The butcher watched with cautious optimism as Maverick took his first tentative step toward the door of the shop. A mixture of hope and uncertainty churned inside him. This wasn't a decision that could be made lightly after everything Maverick had endured. The warmth of the interior surrounded them, contrasting sharply with the cold world outside, and the butcher wondered if, just perhaps, this could be the calm before a new storm, one that would reshape their lives. "You know, I think I need a good set of eyes around here," he said, trying to keep his tone light. "Might even let you help out. What do you say?" The German shepherd's muscles tensed as his stomach growled softly in response to the butcher's words. Maverick remained uncertain yet intrigued. The prospect of being needed, of finding a purpose other than survival, sent a flicker of warmth through his weary body. But it was also a risk. Could he trust that this man wouldn't cast him aside when things got tough? "Let's get you fed properly," the butcher continued, moving to the back of the shop. He didn't hesitate, didn't look back. He simply took Maverick's silence as an answer, an acknowledgement of the unspoken bond that had begun to form. "Then we'll talk about what comes next." Maverick, driven by a mixture of hunger and curiosity, followed slowly. The butcher retrieved a bowl and filled it with fresh meat scraps, tossing them onto the floor where they landed with a soft thud. As Maverick moved toward the offering, he hesitated once more, his scans alert for a trick or sudden demand. But there was none. This was just food, no strings attached. The remnants of fear slowly eased as he lowered his head to eat, savoring the rich, savory flavor that had eluded him for so long. Each bite was a reminder that perhaps not all humans were cruel. Perhaps there was room in this world, however small, for kindness. "You eat like you've never had a proper meal," the butcher remarked, watching closely as Maverick devoured the food. "And that's exactly what you need, isn't it? A better life." Maverick paused, looking up at the man who had shown him unexpected compassion. It was strange. In the past, he had only known humans as figures of authority or disdain. Yet here he faced someone who, in this moment, wasn't asking for anything in return. Only a chance for redemption for both of them. "Maybe," the butcher continued, a hint of warmth in his voice. "You need to feel what it's like to belong again." The word belong echoed in Maverick's mind. In time, he had lost that sense of belonging, that safe hearth nestled by the fires of companionship. He had been a soldier, but now he was a forgotten warrior, a hero abandoned. Still, something inside him stirred at the notion that perhaps he could find a new place in this world, even in the shadows of past scars and loss. As the butcher set down a clean towel for Maverick to lay on, he turned toward the meat display behind him. The early morning light flooded the shop, revealing hints of a messy yet loving environment. Fresh cuts, spices that could leap with flavor, and the intricate tools of his trade. Each belonged in its rightful place, just as Maverick wanted to find his own. Moments passed silently, the butcher's movements smooth and practiced. Maverick finished his meal, feeling his strength returning with every bite. Tension slowly ebbed from his body. Maybe it was true. This man didn't see him as a stray but as a part of something bigger, something beneficial to both of them. "I had a dog once," the butcher said suddenly, breaking the quiet. "Just like you. He saved me in more ways than I could say. I owe it to him to give you a chance to." Maverick listened intently, his ear flicking at the sound of the butcher's words. Though he focused on the man, he still remained watchful, alert. He had witnessed the harshness of life on the streets and the vulnerability that came with it. Would this butcher keep him around for long, or would he send him back out into the storm when the warmth faded? But the butcher continued, seemingly in a world of his own. After he passed, I spent years thinking I could never replace him. You never can. But instead, you learn to cherish the memories and let them guide you to your next steps. Maverick's heart warmed at those words. Logic had taught him that letting go equaled loss, but perhaps he could find his place here in a way that honored those who had come before him. He had lived a life of service. There was nothing stopping him from continuing his legacy here if the butcher allowed him. Tell you what, the butcher said with a nod, catching Maverick's gaze again. You and I, we're both a bit rough around the edges, but we can figure this out together. Tomorrow, we'll go for a walk, get to know the neighborhood a bit, and I'll show you where I keep everything. Maybe you'll want to help. There was something genuine in his voice, something beyond mere words. Maverick decided right then that he would aim to shed the weight of his past and embrace the future this man was offering. As the butcher cleaned up, Maverick settled down onto the towel, feeling peace sweep over him. He might have lost his mission and his place in this world, but perhaps he could be a soldier once again, not just for his own sake, but for this man who had dared to extend a hand. The butcher glanced over one final time, and, seeing Maverick's eyes softening as he relaxed, offered a knowing smile before bidding goodnight. Tomorrow, he muttered. Tomorrow, we start fresh. And for the first time in a long while, Maverick felt that tomorrow held more than just a struggle for survival. Tomorrow could be a new beginning, a chance to find purpose again. As dawn broke over New York, casting warm hues across the butcher shop's front window, the air buzzed with fresh possibilities. Maverick stirred, stretching out on his towel and blinking sleep from his eyes. He could hear the familiar hum of the refrigerators, but something felt different. There was an undeniable sense of hope lingering in the atmosphere. The butcher was already at work, whistling softly to himself as he sorted through the day's deliveries. Maverick's heart quickened. Today was the day the butcher promised they would begin anew. He rose to his feet carefully, feeling the residual stiffness still present in his joints. The memories of the cold concrete beneath him had begun to fade like distant echoes, replaced with the warmth and safety this newfound space had provided. Morning, soldier, the butcher greeted, glancing over with a grin. Ready for our adventure? The word soldier struck a chord deep within Maverick. It was not just a title. It was a reminder of his purpose, of the duties he had once cherished, and of the fight that had once run parallel to his very existence. Maverick's tail twitchily lifted, though he still struggled with uncertainty. There was a lingering habit to maintain his composure. Old instincts clung to him like a second skin. The butcher, sensing the tension, chuckled lightly. We'll go at your pace, okay? Just be yourself. Maverick tucked his head, attempting to reconcile the warmth of acceptance with the remnants of doubt coursing through him. The butcher moved to the door, opening it wide to the bustling world beyond. Light and sound surged in, filling the shop with the vibrancy of the city waking up. Come on, buddy, the butcher called, gesturing for Maverick to follow. This was it. The door stood open, and Maverick took a cautious step forward, crossing the threshold between the safety of the shop and the uncertainty of the world. The street ahead glittered from the rain, and he felt the cold air brush beneath his coat, awakening the latent instincts within him. Voices swirled around, laughter mingled with the honking of taxis, and in that moment, he felt both alive and overwhelmed. As they strolled alongside the bustling market, the butcher paused to interact with neighbors, exchanging friendly words and laughter. Maverick observed, feeling the vibrancy of the community weaving itself around them. This is my world, and now it could be yours too, the butcher explained, glancing down at Maverick. You're not just a stray anymore, you're part of this. Each new interaction filled Maverick with warmth, but doubt still crept at the edges of his thoughts. What if this was just a glimpse of happiness before reality struck again? As they wandered further into the heart of the city, Maverick noticed the subtle exchanges happening around him. A baker offering fresh bread, shopkeepers setting up for the day, children laughing as they chased one another. The pulse of life resonated deeply within his instincts, reminding him of all he had lost but also of what might still be gained. Suddenly, a shrill cry cut through the air. A commotion erupted along a nearby street. A child had dropped her ice cream cone, and a group of teenagers nearby began to laugh, the moment transforming into a scene of chaos. Without thinking, Maverick's training kicked into high gear. He bolted forward, his instincts guiding him as he dashed into the crowd, drawing upon the skills that once defined him. A protector, a soldier ready to step into action. The butcher's voice reached out. "Maverick, wait!" But there was no stopping the momentum, recognizing someone in distress. He surged through the throng, his body pushing past hesitant onlookers, arriving by the sobbing girl who struggled against the laughter around her. Before he knew it, Maverick was standing guard, intimidating enough that the teenagers began to back away, their laughter dying down under the weight of his presence. His instincts flared. He turned to the girl, nudging her gently, sensing her need for comfort. With a familiar softness that still lingered within him, he offered his presence without thinking. She looked up, her tears halting, replaced by wide eyes as she recognized the gentleness within this creature that had sprung forth seemingly from the shadows. The butcher arrived at his side, disheveled yet proud. "You see that?" he exclaimed, his voice filled with excitement. "That was incredible." Maverick withdrew slightly, still adopting a protective stance but turning his attention back to the girl, who now reached forward to pet his soggy fur. In that moment, he felt the tremors of his past pulse within his heart, a purpose awakening again beyond mere survival. "Does he have a name?" the little girl asked, tears still glistening. "His name is Maverick," the butcher replied, a smile creeping onto his visage. "He's a hero. He's here to help." In that small act, something important reconfigured between them. Maverick wasn't just a stray. He was becoming part of something bigger, a protector, a friend, and someone who could bring comfort back into the world that had once turned its back. As the girl turned back to her parents, a newfound light danced in her eyes, and Maverick felt something shift within himself. The butcher looked over at Maverick, a mixture of pride and understanding illuminating his face. "See? You're not just a soldier of the past. You can forge a new future. You can help again." Together, they walked back to the butcher's shop, each step filled with purpose. Just outside the door, Maverick took a moment to look back at the laughter now echoing through the streets. The world wasn't waiting to pass him by. It had opened its arms to offer new stories, new missions, new life. The early afternoon sun began to dip behind towering buildings, casting long shadows across the streets as Maverick and the butcher settled back into the rhythm of their shop. The day's excitement still hummed between them, both invigorated by the unexpected venture into the city. As they cleaned and organized the space, Maverick felt increasingly at home amidst the comfortable aromas of fresh herbs, meat, and spices. With each passing moment, the warmth of belonging seeped deeper into his bones, pushing aside the lingering doubts of what the future might hold. "Maverick, I could use a hand," the butcher called, motioning for the dog to join him near the back. "I think these needs a bit of cleanup." He gestured towards a set of crates filled with fresh produce. Maverick sprang into action, a sense of purpose flooding through him. He saw the butcher's trust in him act as a tether, drawing out instincts that had lain dormant for far too long. He worked with the butcher, moving crates and organizing supplies as they established a system, each task reinforcing their bond, each completed job igniting Maverick's spirit. Later, as they took a short break, the butcher leaned against the wall, careful to catch Maverick's gaze. "I've been thinking. You're not just here to eat my scraps and keep me company. You're capable, and I'd like to see how deep that ability goes." Maverick cocked his head, his heart racing. The glimmer of possibility ignited within him. What did this mean? Was he truly going to be allowed to help, to serve a purpose again, beyond mere survival? The butcher leaned forward, the excitement palpable in his voice. "There are times when I need help beyond just the shop, small deliveries, running errands. With your skills, I think you'd excel." Maverick's heart warmed. The world that had once discarded him was beginning to remember what he was meant to be. This wasn't merely a gesture. It was a call to duty, the resurgence of the soldier he longed to embrace. But as anticipation built, uncertainty slithered in like a shadow. What if, despite the trust being offered, he wasn't capable of fulfilling this role? The scars of doubt lingered, threatening to derail him once more. "Hey," the butcher interrupted his thoughts, eyeing him keenly. "I'm not expecting you to be perfect. No one is. Just be yourself and do your best." Maverick nodded, his resolve strengthening. He could do this. He could forge ahead on this path of renewed purpose. And so their first delivery was set, transporting fresh meats to a nearby restaurant owned by an old friend of the butcher's. Steps away from his rustic shop, a mission out of the confines of his newfound security. Maverick, imbued with the adrenaline of excitement, trotted alongside as they left the shop together. The butcher's soft voice floated down to him. "Remember, just be aware of your surroundings. Let's show them what you can do." As they strode forward into the vibrant streets, every sound, every scent captured Maverick's heightened senses. The chaotic rhythm of city life surrounded him, yet it felt different. He was no longer an outcast, but a part of an essential living tapestry. The butcher led him to the restaurant, a charming place with an inviting awning and a bustling patio where patrons laughed and clinked glasses. The butcher approached the back entrance, and they stepped inside the bustling kitchen where the delicious aromas mingled in a tantalizing embrace. "Maverick, this is Sam," the butcher introduced, gesturing to a grinning chef. "He's my buddy, and is vital around here." Maverick scanned the kitchen, assessing the busy movement of chefs and servers and the distant laughter of diners beyond the kitchen door. Sam reached down, offering a welcoming hand. "I've heard all about you. Hope you're ready to lend a paw." As he stepped closer, Maverick felt the tension in his shoulders relaxing, surprised by the warmth from this new connection. This wasn't just another mission. It was a chance to find rhythm once again, to revitalize his spirit and redefine what it meant to belong. "Let's get this meat into the cooler, shall we?" Sam grinned, guiding Maverick through the bustling kitchen. "You just wait. This place is where all the magic happens." As they moved swiftly through, Sam shared stories of the restaurant. Every word he spoke infused Maverick with energy, pulling him deeper into the heart of this brand-new world. With the butcher's guidance and Sam's encouragement, Maverick began to grasp the flow of the kitchen, identifying how he fit within this new tapestry. Each successful moment rekindled a flicker of joy within him, igniting long-forgotten snippets of the canine's former life, a time where his mission meant more than mere subsistence. Finally, they returned, having completed the delivery. The butcher's smile revealed an abundance of pride, evident in the way he clasped a rough hand on Maverick's back. "You did fantastic. I knew you had it in you." Maverick's heart thrummed with exhilaration as they stepped out of the restaurant and back into the lively streets. The rhythm of possibility thrummed in his chest, guiding him ever forward. That night, as they returned to the shop, Maverick curled on his towel, a radiant warmth enveloping him. The memories of abandonment began to fade, a new resolve anchoring deep within him. "Tomorrow, we can do more," the butcher murmured, tucking a fleece blanket around Maverick's body. "You're not a stray anymore. You're a part of this family." For the first time since that fateful day on the streets, Maverick let go of the pain of the past. He drifted into a peaceful sleep, dreams filled with hope, a vibrant tomorrow, a soldier ready to embrace a new mission, to serve a purpose once again.